Welcome to the Rotowire DFS podcast brought to you by FanDuel.com, the leader in one-day fantasy sports. I'm your host, Josh Hayes, joined as always by Benny Ricciardi as we break down the huge, gigantic, humongous three-game NBA slate for Thursday NBA DFS. You can always find Benny on Twitter at BennyR11 and over at RotoCurve, Rotowire, and as a featured writer in the DraftKings playbook. And you can also follow me on Twitter at JoshHayesFS. The Rotowire DFS podcast is available on iTunes and Stitcher, so if you get a chance to rate, review us, please go ahead and do so. Don't forget to share and subscribe. Benicio, welcome back to the second half of the NBA action.
Yeah, I'm excited that we're back here. The first day or two off was nice, but after that, I was jonesing for some NBA DFS action. So I'm happy that we're back here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we'd love to have a larger slate, but you know what? Like I always said here, I actually kind of like the small slates and something I specialize a little bit on. I take some pride in, at least for cash games, getting a lineup that does happen to roll fairly well. So we're going to get talking about all the best options that we have available courtesy of FanDuel pricing. So let's go ahead and get started at the point guard position for the Thursday action here and talk about your top options here for cash and GPPs.
Yeah, I think, if you're looking up top, I think the guy you're going to look at is going to be Chris Paul over John Wall. Paul's going up against San Antonio, which isn't a good matchup for anybody. But then again, John Wall's going up against Utah, which is also not a great matchup for anybody. The reason why I like Paul a little more than I like Wall, I think that game's going to be a little bit higher scoring. Obviously, with Blake Griffin out, Chris Paul's being asked to do a little more. And he's actually had some pretty decent games against San Antonio in the last year and a half, if you look at the game logs. He had 48 against them earlier this year. He had 50, 48, 29, and 35 in the 4 games last year. So he's hit that upside of, he's hit that upside of 5X in 3 of the last 5 that he's played against San Antonio. I don't really think it's a great spot for him. He's probably not the best guy on the entire slate to pay up for, but at the point guard position, if I'm paying up, I think I'm going Chris Paul over John Wall.
Yeah, I think I got to go Chris Paul over John Wall there as well. He's been a little bit more efficient and more consistently productive here over the course of the season. And the fact that we've got Utah and their snail ball approach with that tough front line, and John Wall does as much of his damage around the rim as often as he is in games. So this is going to be a little bit tougher. I'm not liking the price of 10-4 versus the 9,900 against Chris Paul. Obviously it's 2 tough teams in San Antonio Spurs, but if anybody can sort of be a little bit more reliant on the assist game and getting value other than having to do it from the scoring end, Chris Paul is probably the better bet between the two, although John Wall is a good assister as well. Down below that too, I think we need to take a close look at Kyrie Irving and Derrick Rose. And then we should have a little bit of a debate on whether you feel like Raul is Nito at 3,700 for the Thursday lineup. So how do you have the rest of that stuff breaking down?
Yeah, I like Kyrie a lot more than I like Derrick Rose, and I think you can make an argument for both of them because neither guy is known as a good defender. I wouldn't even be opposed to people putting the two of them together on some of the rosters that you're building. Kyrie's got 50 fantasy points in, the last 2 games that he's played in. Chicago point guard defense is pretty weak, so I think it's a great spot for him. But again, for $1,100 cheaper, you can have Derrick Rose right now. And the thing about Rose in this matchup is, that the Bulls are still without Jimmy Butler. So they run that pick and roll offense, which means Rose is going to have the ball in his hand quite a bit. He's going to be able to go to the basket, score some points, get some assists. He'll grab some rebounds. Like I said, neither guy plays really good defense. So in that mid-range, I think both of them are in play. If I had to choose one over the other, though, I think I'm going to go with Kyrie. I just like the way he's been playing lately, and I think the matchup's really good for him. And I also think that he's going to get a bump up. I'm hoping Dellavedova's out. If Dellavedova's out, you'll probably see a little bit of a bump in minutes for Kyrie. Not a ton, but definitely enough to help him stay above that upside that we're looking for. So I like Kyrie over Rose, but I think both of those guys are in play, and I wouldn't be opposed to anybody using both of them.
Yeah, I agree there as well. I think given the amount of options in the slate where I'm going to have some sort of exposure to Derrick Rose there as well because there's no Jimmy Butler, and you take a look at the options up top here with Chris Paul and John Wall. It's just bad overall between Utah and San Antonio. At least with Derrick Rose in Cleveland, there's going to be a solid pace, and they're going to need to be fairly reliant on him to sort of try to keep him in the game against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Because it's basically down to him and Pau Gasol for the offense. So by hook or by crook, I think on volume alone, he has a good chance to meet value on that $6,800 price tag. Now, as far as Raul Neto go, I just don't trust or like the guy overall. I almost would rather, go 1,300 up to Tony Parker if he ends up, beating that questionable tag and making the lineup against the LA Clippers there. And then below that too, I just don't feel like we have anybody that we can really make a solid case for. I guess Dellavedova, if he is active with the hamstring injury that he's currently questionable for, could be a case made. But I think I'm going to really just draw the line at Derrick Rose and figure out how I can get value in my lineups outside of those starting options. Are you with me here on that?
Yeah, I mean, the only other guy that I have on my list as well is Patty Mills if, Tony Parker doesn't play. But if Parker's in for $600 more, I think I'd rather have Parker over Mills if I was going to do anything like that.
Yeah, I just don't think I'm going to be hanging out in that neighborhood overall because there's, with what we know about Patty Mills and Raul Neto, they're just between the minutes cap and the lack of overall production, you just feel like you're probably losing value overall by not spending the appropriate dollars at the point guard position for this slate. Well, let's go ahead and move forward to the shooting guard position here and talk about whether or not it's going to be all good in your hood, as in Rodney Hood, for $6K on FanDuel.
Yeah, I actually like Rodney Hood a little bit. I think him and J.R. Smith would be the two shooting guards in that like 5 to 6K range that I would be looking at. You also have Bradley Beal, and then the two guys from the Clippers over there with Jamal Crawford and JJ Redick. Danny Green, a little less expensive. I think Hood and JR would be the two guys I'm looking for. Again, Chicago shooting guard defense is good when Jimmy Butler's in. Without Jimmy Butler, I don't think we have to worry about it as much. Cleveland is scoring a few more points, so I think J.R. Smith is in play. And then Washington, we know, is a paced-up team that has trouble guarding, anybody over on the wings. So you got to like Rodney Hood as well. His scoring's been up a little. He's been coming back and returning value, so he's not in a bad spot. Those are probably the two guys that I'd be willing to pay up for. But I think the guy who I'm going to have in just about every roster, cash or GPP, with Jimmy Butler out, is going to be E'Twaun Moore. And it's not like I'm expecting this guy to get me 30 or 40 fantasy points like he did that one huge game that he has. But at 4,300, I definitely think he's going to be playing 28 to 32 minutes, and I definitely think he can get me 20 to 30 fantasy points, which would basically be 5-6x value and, a pretty good return. So this is one of the spots that I'm looking to save. I think E'Twaun Moore is going to definitely be locked into my lineups, and then I'm probably going to decide between Hood and Smith as the other guy that I put in there with him.
Yeah, I agree with you there as well. E'Twaun Moore is going to be like a solid exposure guy for as long as his price still hangs, very closely. I think are we at the bottom at 3,500 in minimum salary, if I'm correct, with FanDuel?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So
yeah.
we're talking about 800 above minimum salary right now at a position that you definitely can target with J.R. Smith defense. So there as well. And having said that too, J.R. Smith for 5,300 as a guy who's actually been producing fairly well. On the radar. Maybe you want to limit him to GPPs because he had a performance like against the LA Lakers where he sort of disappeared off the map with just 11 fantasy points. But prior to that little bit of a dud, we're talking about 6x, 6x, 4.7, 5.5, and 5x in the last 6 games. That's super consistent for cash and a nice, I wouldn't call him a ton of overall GPP value, but if he has been stroking it from 3. Even in the one game where he against the LA Lakers, he hit 3 threes. Before that, he hit no fewer than 4 trays in the past 6 games roll. That's where he's going to do the majority of his damage, but he's almost always wide open when he gets a shot because LeBron, Kyrie, and Love are out there on the floor with him. So I like him at least as a tournament play, and maybe even as a cash saver as well. With the amount of options. The good news here as well is because Rodney Hood is about the most you're going to spend. I don't think I'm really going to be taking too much exposure to Bradley Beal over for an extra 300 when you know that you can save the cash and have a player who's actually been outscoring him on a more consistent basis in Rodney Hood there as well. Some people have been. Are you on the fence? Are you in or out on the whole Danny Green experience? For me, I don't think that overall Manu Ginobili being out of the lineup is really going to make enough of a difference for me overall, and the game logs have been super inconsistent. I know that you're getting a nice little discount too on him at 4,500, but just haven't really bought in on Danny Green pretty much all season long. What's your take there on Danny Green?
Yeah, I haven't used him at all in cash games. I think I did throw him in there once or twice in the tournament, but I tend to agree with you. I mean, he doesn't have usually when I'm looking at a cheap guy, I want somebody that has big upside. I want somebody that can get me 30 to 35 fantasy points. And he has done that maybe once or twice all season when his shot is dropping. For the most part, though, I don't usually play a lot of the guys on the Spurs for the same reason. You know, their starters don't get a ton of minutes. Everybody kind of plays a little bit. You know, as much as they're a great team and I like watching them play, I don't love them at all for fantasy. And he's not really a big upside kind of guy. So for me, I'd rather take Etuan Moore for a couple $100 cheaper. I think Moore even has a better chance for upside. And, you know, again, I don't even think that Green has a safe floor because we've seen him have games where he goes out there and puts up 15, 18 fantasy points, and that's not going to get it done at 4,500.
That's definitely not going to get it done at 4,500. So, yeah, I'm with you there as well. Not something that you can necessarily trust in terms of overall production, and which is why I would probably limit him to GPPs at best. But, you know, when we can go all the way down to Etuan Moore for $200 cheaper and sort of trust that he's got a safer level of production, I think we can sort of say Etuan Moore down there at the bottom, Rodney Hood up top, and then, you know, I'm fading Crawford and JJ Redick because of San Antonio Spurs defense, and then you've got J.R. Smith, who's also a nice little mid-price option there as well. The good news is between these three spots, between these positions overall, you know, after spending a good amount with Chris Paul, we really haven't spent too much else. Everything has been fairly reasonably priced overall. So I think we're, in terms of salary cap pricing, we're in pretty good shape as we move to the small forward position. But before we talk about small forward, we have to let you know that if you haven't taken advantage of the Rotowire 10-day free trial that's available, all you have to do is go to rotowire.com/pod and take advantage of that 10-day free trial for free with all the latest daily optimizer stuff that you love to use and take a look at there. So lineup optimizers for all the major sports: NFL, NBA, NHL, college basketball, golf, I believe, is up and going here there as well. Yes, it is. I'm looking at an optimal lineup that includes Justin Rose and Frederick Jacobson and Chris Stroud there for this upcoming tournament there on the PGA. So we got a lot of great stuff available. We have a soccer optimizer there as well. If you want to talk about EPL or MLS, we got you covered here at the Rotowire DFS podcast. So make sure you take advantage. Rotowire.com/pod, free 10-day trial. Let them know that Josh and Benny sent you. You won't regret it. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the small forward position and talk about your top options here for Thursday.
Yeah, I think there's a couple guys that you can pay up for here. Like LeBron James in that game against Chicago. I think that, you know, Chicago's been pretty weak at guarding the small forward position. You're going to have guys like Dunleavy and, you know, Tony Snell, Dougie McBuckets trying to guard him, and I don't see any of them keeping him in front of them. LeBron's been playing well since they made the Tyronn Lue switch, putting up a little bit more production. The whole team's playing a little bit faster, so I like him up top as one of the guys I'm paying up for today. Also like Kawhi Leonard. I think he's in a pretty good spot. His price has come down. You know, he was above 8,000 in the almost $9,000 range earlier in the year. Now he's down to 7,700. He had been 7,300 and producing really well over the last couple games before the All-Star break. But, you know, he's somebody that I like. I think the Clippers are going to keep this game kind of close. We know that the Clippers' wing defense has been a problem for them for years right now, so I think it's a good spot for Kawhi as well. Those are the two guys that I'd be willing to pay up for at the top. Then, you know, I half was joking about it, but, you know, Doug McDermott has been playing some pretty big minutes over the last couple games. His price is still pretty cheap. He's $3,600, so he's $100 off the floor. And he's been giving you a good, like, 5, 6, 7x return in his last couple starts. So him and Wesley Johnson would be the two guys towards the bottom of the list that I'd be looking to have some exposure to. And then up towards the top of the list, if I can afford to, I'm definitely looking at LeBron and Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah, I agree with you there as well. I think that like this is sort of another spot where you don't have a lot of value plays that we really sort of feel like you can make a case for there as well. You know, your boy Wesley Johnson, who you've jumped in from time to time, is in a really bad spot against Kawhi Leonard and San Antonio defense. I don't love anybody that the Clippers really have to offer in Mabute or Paul Pierce. So you're really just stuck with 3 or 4 main options, and then the cheapest you can sort of go down to is is Otto Porter defense for 5,300, but I think it's going to definitely be worth paying up into the Kawhi, Gordon Hayward, and LeBron James range there. And I actually feel pretty comfortable with Gordon Hayward. It's probably my best pick out of the bunch, with Otto Porter being, I think, bottom 2 all season long in DVP at the small forward position. So that's something I'll be definitely looking to take advantage with his price at 7,800 for Thursday on FanDuel. All right, power forward up next. Let's talk about how much you love the power forward options here for Thursday.
I actually don't love the power forward option that you're referring to in that pun right there. He's actually the one guy who I probably won't be using all that much on Thursday night. I'd rather come down to LaMarcus Aldridge against the Clippers. We know with Blake Griffin out, they really don't have a power forward, so he's going to see maybe some Paul Pierce, some Emba Mute, just a whole bunch of guys who just are not going to be able to guard him. So I do like Aldridge here. I also like Favors going up against Washington. It's a paced-up game. Favors is still a little bit cheap. He's been returning really good value with the points and the blocks and the rebounds lately. So I think you can use him too. The guy who I'm on the fence about, wanted to get your opinion on, Tristan Thompson, who we talked about, even though he's getting more minutes and is still kind of cheap, he's had a couple games where he just really didn't produce at all. The last game before the break, he had a monster game. I think he put up 16 points and 13 rebounds or something along those lines. 35, 36 fantasy points. Actually, he might have even gotten to 40 fantasy points. So how do you feel about Tristan Thompson? Are you okay saving on him in this matchup, or is he somebody you're going to be staying away from?
I would limit it to only GPPs because, for every 15 and 13 with 4 assists performance that he had, against the LA Lakers, he throws up a 2-point with 10 rebounds and 1 block, 17 points, fantasy dud for you against Sacramento. There's also, I really think you need to limit him to GPPs overall. I'm fine with taking a gamble because it is 4,800, and among the stars that we sort of are taking a look at, that's probably the best value that you can sort of get for somebody who is a lock for 30 minutes. But you know what? I would actually not be too opposed to paying up an extra how many $100 there with Taj Gibson, who is also very inconsistent there. But we're talking about with 300 more for Taj Gibson versus Tristan Thompson. At least with Taj, he should have a little bit more of a scoring role than Tristan Thompson. I don't feel great about these two options overall. I'm going to be honest with you there as well. I think that I would prefer to live in LaMarcus Aldridge or the Derek Favors range for 7,500. Maybe that's not feasible. If you're going to put a gun to my head, I guess I'm going to take the discount for $300 on Tristan Thompson because if I have to choose between the lesser of two evils, at least with Tristan Thompson, you're saving a few extra bucks, and that he's probably a good bet for 10 rebounds. So if he ends up getting lucky or gets enough putbacks or whatever buckets, then you have the potential for a double-double, which doesn't reward you extra on FanDuel, but may apply elsewhere. So that's sort of what I'm looking at there. But are you with me here that we probably, if you can at all afford it, make as many efforts as possible to at least get up into the Aldridge and Favored range for Thursday? Yeah,
Aldridge Favors is the combo that I want to use. If you put a gun to my head and I needed a salary saver, I think Dudley, Gibson, and Thompson are the three that you could possibly look at. Maybe even Bobby Portis, but he still hasn't been playing a ton of minutes and really producing all that well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just feel, for cash games, I would just feel so much more comfortable if I could go with I like Aldridge and Favors better. Do you like Love, or is he third on your list of those three guys as well?
He's third on my list because he had the shoulder injury that he left the last game with, which sort of, obviously, I would like to see a game before I trust him in terms of production. They said that he wasn't going to miss any game or miss any times, and he had basically a week of rest. So that piece is fine of it. But at least with Derek Favors, he's got a plus matchup against the three-headed monster that is Nene Hilario, Chris Humphries, and Jared Dudley, I guess, which to me I think is the best matchup that we can come up with overall. And then Aldridge against the LA Clippers is probably equally as good, but they're a better overall defensive team. I think if they're smart and the Doc Rivers, I wanted to believe that he puts DeAndre Jordan on the Marcus Aldridge and then lets anybody else guard Boris Diaw or whatever they end up doing as long as Tim Duncan's not back in the lineup. So that's sort of how I see that situation shaking out. And I'm with you too in terms of value too. I don't trust Bobby Portis enough. Cleveland is, overall defends the front line pretty well. And then Jared Dudley, who really only needs about 23 fantasy points to sort of meet value, is an interesting guy who's been getting 26 to 30 plus minutes. Actually played 38 minutes against Milwaukee. So there's where I would draw the line in terms of value plays. But I think, optimally, we're looking to get into Aldridge or Favors if we're trying to do the right thing with our lineups for Thursday. And I think you and I are agreed. We're talking. I have Favors 1, Aldridge 2, Love 3. Are you with me there?
I actually I think I don't know. I mean, it's close between Favors and Aldridge. I think I actually have Aldridge a little bit above him. I think he's going to have a good game in this matchup with the Clippers, and I think it stays close enough that he gets big minutes. But I wouldn't be opposed to anybody who likes Favors a little more either. I mean, they're very close for me, but I think they're head and shoulders above everybody else.
Always got to be the contrarian. Always got to be the contrarian.
You asked my opinion. I'm telling you the truth. If I'm playing on DraftKings and I can only use one of them or fit one of them in, I have Aldridge over Favors. But on FanDuel, I want them both.
This is where the one point where it's been almost a year, Benny, where we've been hosting shows together. That's the one time where you were just supposed to read the tea leaves and agree with me. I wasn't really asking your opinion. I was just looking for you to co-sign. I mean, I'm just messing around. You know what I mean? I never tell you what to do with your own picks, but yeah. Next time, just make it easy, Honorable. Let's keep the show moving. You can just agree. All right.
Yeah, on FanDuel, I agree with you. I'm using both of them.
Okay, well then there you go. I was right the entire time. That's you're just beating around the bush for whatever reason. All right.
We only have 3 games to talk about. We got to kill at least a little bit of time.
All right. Let's we actually put more of our time to use by talking to the business owners out there who may need a website. If you're looking for a website, why not do it yourself here with Wix.com? No matter what business you're in, Wix has something for you. Used by more than 75 million people worldwide. Wix.com makes it easy to get your website live today. You need to get the word out about your business, so it all starts with a stunning website, and with hundreds of designer-made, customizable templates to choose from, the drag-and-drop editor, there's no coding needed. You don't need to be a programmer or designer to create something beautiful. You can do it yourself with Wix.com. Wix.com empowers business owners to create their own professional websites today, every day. So when you're running your own business, you're bound to be too busy to worry about the budget, the scheduling appointments, or building a website for your business. And because you're too busy, it has to be easy, and that's where Wix.com comes in. With Wix.com, it's easy and free. Go to Wix.com to create your own website today. The results will be stunning. All right, let's go ahead and put a bow on the show today at the center position with your top options here for Thursday.
Yeah, I think the guy that I like the most is going to be DeAndre Jordan, and I don't think he's going to be a popular pick because he is going up against the San Antonio Spurs. But this is a guy who has 40 or more fantasy points in 5 of his last 6 games, so he's been playing pretty well lately. You know, San Antonio, Tim Duncan will probably be back, but I don't think he's going to be playing a ton of minutes. So he may actually even see some like Boris Diaw defense, stuff like that. And the thing is, San Antonio's defense is pretty good at allowing other teams not to score a lot. But it's not like DeAndre Jordan's a guy who relies on scoring for a lot of his points anyway. He gets a lot of his fantasy points with the rebounds and with the block shots. So I think he's probably my top option. I think Pau Gasol is going to be the guy that a lot of people gravitate towards. But I don't like the fact that he's pretty expensive, and he's going up against Cleveland, who has been one of the best teams against center defense, pretty much all season long. So even though he gets a big boost when Jimmy Butler's out, I'm really nervous about using Powell today. So that's why I was trying to look another way. And then when you come down from there, you're paying $7,000 for Gobert or Gortat. Neither one of them really strikes me as a guy that's got, 40-point upside to pay that off. Tim Duncan, maybe. It all depends on how many minutes he sees. He's only 5,800. He's kind of cheap, so he might be a guy that I could look at the bottom. But other than that, I don't like anybody below Tim Duncan. So for me, I think Duncan is the lowest I would go, and that would only be maybe for a tournament. If I wanted safety, I think DeAndre Jordan is probably the safest guy to get me 40 points here.
Yeah, you know what? You're probably right about DeAndre Jordan, too. I don't mind Pau Gasol because for 9K, he was actually a little bit more expensive because I think the usage just has to be so high. Like I said, it's really just down to him and Derrick Rose, and we don't really trust Derrick Rose to be a solid performer. It's not a great matchup. But Pau Gasol has a versatile skill set where to be able to score inside and outside that can cause problems for that defense there as well. I'm okay with Rudy Gobert also against Marcin Gortat as well. He hasn't been super productive, in terms of like blowing you up on in terms of tournament value, but has been pretty coming like in the 30-point range, which creates a nice little safe floor at the $7,500 price tag. I liked him better when he was closer to $7K than 7,500, and he's down to 74 for today's action. And against Marcin Gortat, it's not like a guy that really gets off the floor much. So there could be some some shot blocking opportunity. Now on Gortat's side too, he's been like fairly safe in terms of scoring about 14 and 10. He's giving you that there as well. So if you get to a point where you're like, well, I can't afford Jordan or Gasol, and I need to sort of try to derive some fancy value, 6,900 if you have to pay down, I wouldn't be opposed to it over Rudy Gobert, but I would probably prioritize these three options as DeAndre Jordan 1, Gasol 2, Gobert 3, Marcin Gortat for 6,900 on FanDuel 4. Are you fine with that list of players and that order?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, like I said, I have Jordan number 1. I feel like this is a position where I'm going to build the rest of my roster and get the guys that I want at the other spots. The Kyrie Irvings, the Kawhi Leonards, the LeBron Jameses, the Aldridge, and the Favors. And then whatever I wind up with, I'll put in a center, because if I have enough money to go up and get Jordan, I'll go up and get Jordan. If I only have enough to take Tim Duncan, I think I'd be okay rolling Duncan out there to finish off a roster. I'm pretty indifferent to a lot of these guys. So if there's a position that I'm going to, just kind of let my salary, and my roster construction dictate, this is probably going to be the spot I save for last, because I'd be comfortable putting any of these guys in there if I really had to.
All right, fair enough. I think that's a fairly safe assessment. Obviously, you want to pay up to Jordan, but like once you get below that too, you could be almost as good off as far off for value or price with Rudy Gobert versus Pau Gasol, depending on how well Cleveland defends that position, and they have defended it fairly well all season long. And I'm just not going below Gortat. I know Tim Duncan's supposed to be back, and he had one game back plus all the rest there as well. So if I'm forced to, I guess I will pay 5,800 for him, but I really want to draw the line at Gortat if I can, and not mess around with the Bobans or the Mozgovs or anybody else who could actually be any sort of a potential option. And
I agree with that.
All right, thank you very much. I will. With that note, we'll say that's a wrap for today's show. Don't forget to check out the Rotowire DFS podcast on iTunes and Stitcher for your down convenience. You can check out Benny on Twitter at BennyR11. Twitter handle for me is at JoshHayesFS, and it's at Rotowire for all your season long and DFS fantasy needs. Got any comments, complaints, or questions? Once again, it's at BennyR11. So thanks to everybody for listening, and we'll be back with a full Friday slate here for you on the next edition of the Rotowire DFS video and audio podcast. Thanks for watching and listening. We'll see you next time.